Hello and welcome to Prime Code Media. In this video, I'll be discussing the Bootstrap Carousel. The first carousel example in the documentation is the one with the slides only. Let's just take a look at it. Here is the slides only carousel. As you can see, it's auto playing, meaning that its slides are moving without us having to click on them. But before we discuss this, it's important that we take something into consideration, and that is what the documentation says. Here in bold, it says the active class needs to be added to one of the slides, otherwise the carousel will not be visible. Very important. It further goes on to say, also be sure to set a unique ID on the carousel for optional controls, especially if you are using multiple carousels on a single page. And then lastly, here it says control and indicator elements must have a data, BS, target, attribute, or href for links that matches the ID of the carousel element. We will discuss this further when we take a closer look at the code of the carousel. Now let's take a look at this slides only carousel. As you can see, it's auto playing. Now this is the code of this carousel. What I am going to do, I am going to copy this code and then paste it inside the code play here. And then let me run the code and see what we have. As you can see, at the moment, this we are unable to view the carousel, and this is because the image, for example, appears broken, and this is because there is no source for the image at the moment. So that is why we are unable to view the carousel. So inside the CSS section, I am going to target the carousel items. Here are the carousel items. Here's the first item here. I am going to target all of them inside the CSS section. Remember, we first have to use the period character. It has to precede the class name. So the class name is carousel dash item, a set of curly braces, and then my aim here is to give these carousel items a 200 pixel height. So I'm going to give them a 200 pixel height. This is the CSS property height. 200 pixel is the value of this property. And next, I am going to go inside each of these carousel items and give them a different background colors. The first thing I'm going to do is to insert the style attribute, equal sign, quotation marks, and then inside here I'm going to specify the CSS property. I'm giving them what? Background color. And the background color for this first slide, I'm going to give it a red background color. I think red will be fine. And then I am going to copy this line of code here and paste it inside each of these carousel items. I'm only going to change the color here from red to yellow. I'm going to give this one a yellow. And then I am going to once again paste another one here, and then I'm going to change this one. I'm going to give this one, let's try blue. I think blue will be fine. Now let me refresh and see if we're able to view our slides. There we go. We are now able to view our slides, and that is because we've given them the height of 200 pixel and gave them different background color. At the moment, the carousel is auto playing, but as you might have already noticed, if we wanted to see the previous slide or skip to the next one, we won't be able to do that, because remember, this is a slides only carousel. To be able to do that, our carousel must have controls. Let's go back to our documentation and see how a carousel that has controls looks like. Now here's a carousel that has controls. Here are the buttons. With these buttons, you have the option to go to the third slide and move to the first slide like that. So this one has the controls. Now with regards to the code, the difference is that this one has these buttons. So if I want, I can just copy the entire code and paste it inside my code play, but I only want the buttons. So I'm only going to copy these buttons here, and then I am going to take them inside my code play here. I'm going to paste them right here. Now let me run the code so we can see if we have those buttons. There we go. We now have these buttons inside our carousel. Now our carousel has these buttons, but you'll see that when I click on these buttons, they are not working. They are not working. Why is that? This is because this data bs-target does not correspond to the ID. So you'll see that here it says carousel example controls, and then let's take a look a quick look at the ID. The ID says carousel examples slides only, and this takes us back to what the documentation was saying to us, as I was showing you just now. Now let's just revisit what we were seeing. Here it says control and indicator elements must have the database target attribute that matches the ID of the carousel element. So we know now what we need to do. So I am going to copy this ID here. I am then going to okay, let me enlarge this like so. All right, I am then going to come in here and then delete this and paste the correct ID so that these buttons correspond with the ID like so. Let me run the code and put it to a test. Let's now click. As you can see, now I am able to use these buttons. For example, if I want to move from red to blue, I can come here, move from red to blue, from blue to red. I can do that. So I am now able to use these buttons because the data-bs target attribute corresponds with the ID of the carousel. One other thing that I should also note is that here you can, if you want, replace this or use the href instead. For example, I am going to just delete this here and replace it with an href. Even here, replace this with an href, and then let me run the code. You'll see that I am still able to use the buttons from blue to yellow. I can move from yellow to blue, so I am still able to use these buttons. This is despite having replaced the data-bs-target attribute with the href attribute. What we can also add to our carousel are indicators. Let's just look at a carousel that has indicators. Here is a carousel that has the indicators. Here are those indicators, and for us to add indicators to our carousel, all we will have to do is just to copy these carousel indicators and paste them inside our code. But right now I am not going to add these indicators because I think the best way to learning about carousels is to focus or make sure that you understand the code at its bare minimum and then add other elements as you go along. Right now I would like us to go back and take a look at our carousel here. Let's take a look at our carousel. As you can see, the slides or the slide items take a couple of seconds to cycle. How do we change this? Let's see what options the documentation has for us. Inside the documentation, if you click on options here, you'll see, first of all, the documentation says as options can be passed via data, attributes, or JavaScript, you can append an option name to data-bs and as in data -bs animation. This is just an example that they are giving us. So what do we want to do? We want our slides to move a bit faster than they do at the moment. And then when we come to the options here, you'll see that here it says the default interval is 5,000. So this is the option that we will go for, this interval, and at the moment the default interval is 5,000 milliseconds. This is 5 seconds. So we want to change this. We want to change this from 5,000 to something else, so that our slides move a bit faster than they do. So inside my code here, I'm going to come inside here, and then right here I'm going to say data -bs interval. Remember, this is the option, and then I am going to set this to let's set this to 2,000 milliseconds. That's 2 seconds. Let's run the code and see if our slides are going to move a bit faster. Let's wait and see. We have the blue here, the reds, the yellow. Now our slides are moving a bit faster than they did before. Let's just change the 2,000 to 1,000 milliseconds. That's 1 second, which means every second we are going to have a slide moving. Let's see if that works. There we go. So we have managed to change the interval. Our slides are now moving a bit faster, and this is just one of those options that Bootstrap offers us. Let me just put this back. It might blind us. Okay, I'm just going to put this at 2,000, and let me run the code. Cool, I think everything is now fine. So as I was saying, this is just one of those options that that Bootstrap offers us. You have keyboard, for example. You have the pause. If you want to be able to pause the slides by hovering over the slides. So if you hover over the slide, then the slide will automatically stop or pause. So these are some of the options that you can just play around with. Now I want us to go back and take a closer look at this code, because I think it's important that we fully understand everything inside this code, and that is what this code is made up of. Now let's take a look at the code. At the top here we have a div that has the ID. That is the ID. Here is the ID, and it is important that this ID is unique, not duplication. Next we have the Bootstrap classes. Bootstrap class carousel. This says this div is a carousel. The next class is a slide. Class of slide. This class says this carousel is made up of slides. Next we have this attribute, which is set to carousel. What this does is that it ensures that the carousel autoplays, meaning that we don't have to click on it in order to move the slides or for the slides to move. So this is what this carousel means. Now data-bs-interval is what we have just now added in terms of changing the speed at which these slides move. Next we have the carousel inner. Now the carousel inner, this is the div that contains the carousel items. Inside the carousel inner we have the carousel items. Here is the carousel item. So this is the class that is given to all the carousel items. And now it is important that one of these items has a class of active, as it is mentioned earlier here inside the documentation, that if a class or if an element or a slide does not have a class of active, otherwise the carousel will not be visible. So this is very, very important. This here is that the class here. And then we have the style attribute. This is what we used in order to give each of our slides its different background color. Next we have the buttons. And the first class inside this button is a carousel dash control dash prev. Now this refers to the left button. As you can see, the second button has the class carousel control dash next. So this refers to this button. This is the next button, and this is the previous button. The type is that of button. And then the href attribute, remember, as I was explaining earlier, here it's it corresponds to or targets the ID. You remember that we even changed this earlier when we added this to our code. So this corresponds to the ID of the carousel, as I was explaining earlier. And then now moving forward, we have data dash ps dash slide, and now this attribute there, data dash ps dash slide, alters the slide position relative to its current position. Okay, next we have a span which has a class of carousel dash control dot prev dot icon. Now this is used together with the carousel dash control dash prev inside the button to create these buttons that you are seeing right here. And then inside the span, there's this attribute area dash hidden. Now area is short for accessible rich internet application, and when it's set to true, as it is right here in this attribute, when it is set to true, this attribute tells the screen readers to ignore the element. And this is important in terms of making your web page accessible to visually impaired users. And finally, we have a span with a class visually hidden. Now, visually hidden, this class hides the text content from sighted users, but makes it available to screen reader users. Once again, you will use this to ensure that your web page is accessible to the visually impaired. And now this is what the code of this carousel is made up of. And with a good understanding of this, you will be able to create your own carousel, or rather customize some of these carousels that are offered by Bootstrap inside here, because you will understand what role each line of code plays. Now, since we won't be able to cover everything about the carousels in a single video, I'd like to suggest that you play around with the code, create different types of carousels, explore different options and so on. And please feel free to share how it's going in the comments section. For example, here's one of the carousels that I have created, which has the slides of South African presidents since 1994. So the difference between this carousel and the ones that we have discussed, as you might have already noticed, is that this one has captions. So this is just an example of what you can create. So play around with the code, create carousels, and share, and let's learn together. That brings us to the end of our discussion. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon to be notified when new videos come out. Till we code again next time, take care. Bye.